We often think of evil as something great and obvious, like a dark presence, a catastrophic event, or a sinister figure. But the truth is that, most of the time, it acts in a subtle, imperceptible way, infiltrating our thoughts, habits, and daily relationships. The real danger is not only in great temptations or extreme acts, but in the small influences that shape our decisions and move us away, little by little, from what is right. In this video, you'll understand how this influence happens on a daily basis, in ways so discreet that go unnoticed. Scene 1. Normalization of wrong. We live in a world where behaviors that were once considered wrong are now seen as normal or even desirable. This process of error normalization is one of the most effective forms of negative influence. Small lies, dishonesty at work, infidelity, envy, and even indifference to the suffering of others begin to be treated as things of life. Gradually, what previously caused discomfort is accepted without resistance. This happens because our mind adapts to what we see often. If we are constantly exposed to content that relativizes moral values or encourages greed, lust, and selfishness, we begin to accept these attitudes as natural. The problem is that this change does not happen all at once. The process is gradual, almost imperceptible, becoming part of the routine to the point where we no longer question. The strategy is simple: to trivialize what was previously condemnable. And the best way to do that is through entertainment, media, and even casual conversations. Phrases like "everyone does" or "it's just a joke" serve to minimize the impact of bad choices. Over time, our moral standards are adjusting downwards, and when we realize, we are already justifying attitudes that before would never accept. Scene 2. The cultivation of discord. A constant conflict environment is fertile ground for negative influence. Small disagreements are turned into big fights, and resentments are fed until they become hatred. How many times have you felt anger over something small, but let it grow rather than resolve it immediately? Discord can be planted in a subtle way, through gossip, distorted interpretations, or even misunderstandings that are not clarified. When we give room to these feelings, we nurture pride and the need to always be right. Instead of seeking reconciliation, we prefer to feed resentment because it gives us an illusory sense of superiority. The result of this is a gradual separation between people who once loved each other. Couples enter into crisis for small problems that have become monsters. Friendships break because one did not want to give the arm to twist. Families are divided by meaningless fights. All this begins with small seeds of discord that, when cultivated, become real walls between people. Scene 3. The false sense of control. The illusion that we are in control of everything can be a dangerous trap. We often believe that we can deal with any situation and that nothing can really affect us. This thought leads us to underestimate risks and ignore warning signs. How many times have you heard someone say, "I know what I'm doing," while making a clearly wrong decision? This overconfidence can lead to destructive choices because it convinces us that we do not need help or guidance. When we believe that nothing can influence us, we become even more vulnerable to negative influence. Also, this sense of control often leads us to rely too much on our own strengths and ignore our need for spiritual and emotional growth. Pride in not wanting to appear weak or dependent prevents us from seeking advice, support, or even recognizing that we have made mistakes. With this, we are stuck to harmful patterns of behavior, believing that we are in charge, when in fact we are being manipulated without realizing. Scene 4. The continuous distraction. The excess of information and entertainment may seem harmless, but when it prevents us from reflecting on our choices, it becomes a serious problem. We have never been so connected to screens and at the same time so disconnected from ourselves and the people around us. The continuous distraction keeps us too busy to realize the effects of our actions. If we are always consuming content, without moments of silence and reflection, we end up acting impulsively and without purpose. This facilitates the adoption of harmful behaviors because we do not give time to evaluate the consequences. The danger lies in the fact that, without realizing it, we are shaped by what we consume. If we are always surrounded by negative messages, toxic competitiveness, and unreal patterns, we begin to absorb these values as if they were natural, and, without time to reflect, we follow this flow without question. Scene 5. Attachment to materialism. The desire for material goods is not in itself a bad thing. The problem arises when this desire becomes an obsession, The exaggerated consumerism makes us measure our personal value by what we possess and not by who we are. This incessant search for status and wealth takes us away from what really matters. We start treating people differently based on what they have or can offer. Relationships become superficial, and happiness depends on external conquests. In addition, materialism creates a constant dissatisfaction. It never seems enough. There is always something new to buy, a new financial goal to achieve, a new status to be achieved. And this infinite search prevents us from feeling gratitude and contentment. The more we seek satisfaction in external things, the more empty we feel. Scene 6. The contempt for truth. We live in an age where truth is often distorted or relativized. Instead of seeking facts, we choose to believe only what suits us. This is dangerous because it makes us manipulable, easy to deceive, and unable to see the consequences of our choices. Contempt for truth manifests itself in many ways. In blind belief in false news, in the denial of personal errors, and in the justification of wrong attitudes based on convenience. When we turn away from the truth, we become more vulnerable to negative influence because we do not have a solid basis for making decisions. In addition, this relativization of truth generates confusion and conflicts because each one lives his own version of the facts. As a result, we lose the ability to discern what is right and wrong, opening space for all kinds of deception. Scene 7. Indifference to the neighbor. The insensitivity to the suffering of others is perhaps one of the most obvious signs that something is wrong. Individualism makes us believe that we do not have time to help, that the problems of others do not concern us, and that each one should take care of himself. Over time, this mentality makes us cold and distant. We no longer worry about those who need support, ignore requests for help, and avoid situations that make us reflect on the pain of others. This makes us less human, less compassionate, and more likely to act only for our own benefit. The negative influence in our daily lives does not happen obviously, but through small habits, thoughts, and decisions that lead us away, little by little, from what is right. The normalization of error, discord, the illusion of control, excessive distraction, materialism, and indifference are just some of the ways in which this influence manifests itself, often masked by seemingly harmless routines. The first step to resist these influences is to identify them. Paying attention to our habits and thoughts, questioning what we accept as normal, and seeking a more conscious and balanced life are effective ways to avoid falling into these silent traps. Small daily choices make all the difference and can determine whether we are strengthening our integrity or letting ourselves be led by destructive influences. After all, the greatest danger is not in what we see clearly, but in what affects us without our knowledge. Do not underestimate the power of these subtle influences, for it is in distraction and indifference that they gain strength. Leave in the comments your opinion, and if you have gone through episodes like these in your day-to-day, be aware, because they can be the enemy's traps, and recognize that is already the first step to escape them.